Hey everybody, my name is Nicole Golden and this is the Scar Stories podcast. Welcome back if you've been with us for a while. Make sure if you have not, you check out the website NicoleGolden.org. I have a free Praying Scared prayer journal on there that I would love for you to check out. But I am so excited for our guest today. With me is Dena Yohe, and we are going to be talking about mental illness from a little bit of a different perspective. And it's funny because I was just talking to her before we started that this perspective is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. So we are going to be talking about mental illness from a parent perspective. So in other words, if you are a parent of a child with mental illness, that's the perspective we're going to be bringing you today. And I want to make sure, I'm going to link this when it goes up because this is going to be backwards to everybody. But Dena is the author of You Are Not Alone. And I have just started reading this and I'm telling you, I can't put it down. It is phenomenal. So many people ask for great resources, specifically parents. And I am telling you, you need to get this book. So before I talk too much, Dena, I want you to just kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your ministry. I'm going to let you just kind of talk for a little while here. I'll probably jump in with a few questions, but tell us about your ministry. And I'm sure in order to tell us about your ministry, you're going to have to tell us why your ministry even started. So anyways, take it away.
All right. Well, Nicole, thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here today. And yes, this is not ever what my husband and I thought that we would be doing. We ended up co-founding Hope for Hurting Parents about 10 years ago out of our own painful journey. We have 3 children, and our middle child, our daughter, when she was about 12, cut herself for the first time. And this was over 20 years ago. And at the time, we had never heard of cutting. We did not know what it was or why people did it. And it scared us to death.
Yeah.
We were in full-time ministry, had been our whole married lives. And all we could think of was, what is wrong with our daughter? Why is she doing this? Does she want to die? And what did we do wrong? And that was the beginning of a journey that eventually led to her being diagnosed with several mental health issues that she self-medicated with alcohol and eventually drugs, took her down a very horrible, destructive path for a long time.
Yeah.
And while we were on that journey, we were so lost, we were so broken and crushed, deeply grieving, not understanding anything that was happening or where to turn for help, not wanting anyone to know because of so much shame and guilt. That we kept it hidden, kept it secret. When she went to rehab the first time right out of high school, we knew we needed help. We had to find other people who could help us. When we went to our first Al-Anon meeting, it was great. It helped us a lot. But after several other visits to those meetings, there was something lacking. And for us, it was the faith component, which it is based on Christian principles, but you're not allowed to really talk about that too much. No scripture, of course, or prayer. And then it wasn't just for parents. And it really is different when these issues are with a child than with a spouse or friend.
Yeah.
So we vowed that when we had healed enough ourselves, which took a long time, that we wanted to start something to help other parents because, again, we couldn't find any support, or we didn't even know who to talk to. We didn't know anyone else going through anything like this. All of our friends' kids were thriving, doing really well. They were just so proud of their accomplishments. And here we were, oh, we hope they don't know what's happening in our family.
Yeah.
So we started a support group in 2009, and it just gradually from there, it developed into our burden and passion to do more for parents. And today, Hope for Hurting Parents, we have a wonderful website. It's hopeforhurtingparents.com. I write a blog, a weekly blog. We have support groups, and this is because that was our main source of healing and recovery. So we started a support group, And after several years, we were hearing from other people in other parts of the country who I was communicating with saying, oh, we wish we had something like that here. And so we began to make our materials available digitally.
Mm.
And then because of being asked by more people, we need this here where we live. And we could only do that for so long the way we were getting it out there. So we published it 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so now there are over 50 Hope for Hurting Parents support groups around the country and even in several other countries. So we're just always looking for new ways to reach other parents. I started a YouTube channel under my name, Dena Yohe, short messages of hope. Let's see, and you can sign up for email subscription, words of comfort, encouragement, mostly from scripture, not always things I wrote. Maybe it's something someone else wrote that I pass along.
Yeah.
And then I published my book, as you mentioned. This was just 4 years ago. Well, actually, 4.5. You Are
Yeah.
Not Alone. And that was a big surprise. I'm not an author by trade. This is something new that developed in me in the last 10 years or so, later in life. So again, we are just always looking for new ways to encourage parents. And our mission with Hope for Hurting Parents is to offer comfort, encouragement, and hope to parents on their journey from surviving, which we were doing for so long, just barely surviving, to thriving again,
Yeah.
no matter what's happening with your child. So that's a brief summary for you
Yeah.
of who we are and why we do what we do.
And it's funny you said like authoring is something new for you because I have an English degree. I'm very picky about what I read. And I was shocked by how easy and captivating your writing was. Like it was very easy to read and yet very captivating. And your way of storytelling, and yet then also bringing in truth and grace and comfort. To me, it's very difficult with mental health books because I feel like sometimes they're either too clinical or they're too ethereal. And I just really loved how you wrote your book because I feel like you connect with the reader through telling the stories and you earn our trust, like, hey, I've been there, but then you also give the truth. And so I already have a couple of people I'm going to buy this for and hand out to because I know that they'd be blessed by it. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about right off the bat, and you said this, and I think just helping some parents work through this. And some of the chapters titles I want to read off because I think some people be like, okay, what's the book actually about? She deals with denial, shock, fear and worry, grief and loss, forgiveness, letting go. And one of the things you talk about early on in the book is just kind of wrestling through, as you mentioned, the guilt and the shame. And you mentioned that you had a couple well-meaning people come up to you and they did not mean to hurt or compound the shame, but just confused, like, how did this happen? And I think this is a common thing. I'm a parent of 4, 8 and younger. And I remember when I was first pregnant with my oldest, sitting in my therapist's office, just sobbing like, okay, how am I going to make sure Brooke doesn't get anxiety? How am I going to make sure she doesn't get depression? How am I going to make sure? Because I think as parents, sometimes we think if we do X, Y, Z, our children are going to turn out a certain way.
Exactly.
And so you had a couple of people come up to you and like, well, what did you do? Did you not discipline your child enough? Did you not? So can you talk to us about wrestling through those emotions of, okay, you were completely out of control, that this had nothing to do with you, and how you were able to accept the fact that you were out of control, this had nothing to do with you. Kind of talk us through working through all of those emotions.
Well, it is work. It took a long time. It is a gradual process. And I like people to know that all of this whole journey of healing and our own recovery is a long, slow process that doesn't happen quickly. I think there were several things. One was educating ourselves because we knew nothing. We felt like we fell into a foreign land and, we didn't know the language. So we found the organization NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we both took their free class, family to family class. And that was huge in helping me just understand more the whole nature of mental illness and my daughter's condition. Um, that was one. Meeting other parents going through something similar.
Mm,
Another, like, oh, these are amazing people. You
yeah.
know, they didn't do anything. Um, and the biggest piece was something God revealed to my husband, and studying the scriptures. And it suddenly hit him when he was reading in Genesis that God was the perfect parent, right? He
Mm,
made no mistake. He didn't do anything wrong. And here we have with his first two children,
mm,
they they go off the rails. They didn't have mental illness, but they still chose not to obey, and everything that happened from there. But the whole thing was, if God, the perfect parent, ended up with children who were
wow.
messed up, why do I think I deserve better? I
Yeah.
certainly don't. I know I wasn't the perfect parent. I didn't cause my daughter's mental health issues. She inherited those, but that was huge. And then in Isaiah chapter 5, it talks about a farmer who did everything, planted a vineyard, did everything perfect, everything just right, like you said, the A, B, C,
Yeah.
and had these high expectations, and he didn't get them. He said, "What more could I have done?" So that helped me also to realize, okay, I did the best I could.
Mm, mm,
I didn't know that this was a possibility even.
yeah.
It's not my fault.
Mm,
And, I did really struggle with this, especially in the beginning, because um, my family kept a secret from me.
mm,
I was in my mm, early 40s when I learned that my mom had bipolar disorder,
wow.
and
Wow.
she had kept it a secret her whole life. She did well because she was on medication, and I never had a clue
Yeah.
until she had a breakdown later on in her life, and then it came out. And I was like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ever say anything? Well, they were too ashamed,
Mm,
didn't want anyone to know. And
mm,
so when this happened with my daughter, which I still didn't think could happen, um, I really felt so awful, like, oh, this was because of me. This is because of my
mm,
side of the family. But again, I had to come back to saying, I didn't do anything wrong.
yeah.
I have to just trust God. And this is my daughter's journey, her story, her life to work through and figure out. But so it was a long process, but those are some of the things that really helped me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to land on a couple of things. I was taking some notes as you were talking because you said a couple, and it's funny because, this interview is so out of my wheelhouse. I had initially sent Dena some questions, and then she came back and she was like, you're asking a lot of questions like related to my daughter. I want to speak specifically to parents. And I'm like, okay, so this interview is a little bit more on the fly, which I like to do because it's going to be very conversational because I'm going to be learning with other people. But you made a comment when you were talking about not only your daughter's recovery, but you said you specifically used the word recovery for you and your husband. And I thought that was interesting. Was it so as your daughter was working through her mental health and recovering, do you think that, were you using that word correctly in your mind that you and your husband were recovering? Can you
Yeah,
talk to
at
us
the
about
time,
this?
we didn't realize it. We didn't see it that way, that we needed help too. We
Yeah.
were all focused on her, attorney. She needed help. She needed to, um, and it wasn't until, because she has this dual diagnosis of the mental health factor plus the abuse with substances factor that ended up complicating things even more. When she came home from her second rehab, she's done several.
Yeah.
I was all about what can I do to help her. She was an adult, she's in her 20s, but what can I do? And so we had this conversation where I said to her, Renee, what do you need from me?
Mm,
How can I help you? And I'm expecting her to give me a list of, be sure I'm doing this, be sure I go here, be sure. And I'm already with my little notepad. And she turned it back on me very unexpectedly and said, Mom, what helps me the most is when you work your own recovery and
Mm,
take care of yourself. She
mm.
said, I can tell when you're doing that and it helps me.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
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 Okay,
Yeah.
work on me, and then I'm healthier, and that helps you. Because she said, I know that these things hurt you, and I feel bad. And so when I see that you're thriving and doing better, more peaceful and so on, then I don't feel as guilty for how I know this
That's
impacts you.
powerful stuff. Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. Because I think, in my own situation, my brother committed suicide 2 years ago. And then
Sorry.
I've had these diagnoses for 10 years. And I'm watching my parents, and observing as they're walking through, first all of my diagnoses. And in the beginning, before I was diagnosed, I was just angry. I was so angry. And I was taking out my anger on them, on my husband. My husband and I were just, we got married, and then basically I had a nervous breakdown, and that's when I got diagnosed with all this. Bless his heart, like literally I do, and then the next month. So God was like locking him in, making sure he couldn't run. But I think about that with my parents, and yeah, I'm like having like this epiphany now. Like I saw how it hurt them, and I see even now as they're trying to work through the hurt and the natural guilt and shame and fear and everything that accompanies a decision like suicide. And I'm thinking like, gosh, yeah, I love when I hear that they're getting into counseling, and when I hear that they're walking in community, because there does bring a comfort to like, okay, they're going to be okay from the pain that I've caused them and from the pain that my brothers caused them.
Yes.
Did you feel initially, did you feel selfish taking care of yourself when you knew your daughter was also hurting? Like, did it feel weird to focus on yourself and not on her?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we tell people today is make time for fun.
Mm,
Try to remember those things that refreshed you that you used to do, because we get so focused on
mm,
our child. It's
yeah.
all about them, helping them. If they're still in your home, getting them the help they need, keeping them safe. Uh, if they're adults and not in your home, it's all about hearing from them, being sure they're still okay.
Mm,
Is there anything you can do? So we lose ourselves.
yeah. Yeah.
what what refreshes us and having fun. I mean, we're so sad and depressed all the time. I didn't think I could ever laugh again. I didn't want
Mm,
to have fun.
yeah.
I remember my birthday would roll. I don't care about my birthday. I don't want to decorate for Christmas. I'm just too sad. So
Mm,
yeah, it felt wrong. And again, it was through going to support groups where I heard other people talking who were further down the road than me, and learning from them and their journey to healing and wholeness, that I began to see, okay, it's okay for me to go on a date with my husband
yeah.
and do something fun. But laughing and actually enjoying myself again, that was gradual. It was as I healed in my heart that I could gradually do that again. But it was through doing things proactively, taking that class from NAMI, going to support groups every week,
Mm,
seeing a counselor, getting plenty of rest, all those things we know we need to do, being intentional to incorporate them into my life, reading good books that help me grow too. So
yeah.
it felt very wrong. Yeah, I didn't want to do it, but I realized, okay, I'm not going to survive very well. And then she might start to do better, and then I'm a mess. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
working on me too. So we're both getting healthy. Otherwise, the whole family stays sick.
Yeah. Yeah. And was your husband doing the same things as you? Because I know in a lot of situations, it's easy for, in most cases, and this isn't in all cases, but it's easy a lot of times for the mom to really, okay, what do I need to like to get all on board? I'm going to read, I'm going to take a class, I'm going to do this. And then the husband's just kind of like, what do I do? So did your husband get on board with you? Was it a struggle for him as a male, and especially as a dad? And the men, I'm going to fix this. And not getting frustrated or angry of like, what's wrong with my child? Why can't I fix this? What was his journey like?
We were very fortunate in that most of the time we were on the same page. I did take the class from NAMI first,
Yeah.
though, because I think he felt like, ugh, do I really have to do one more thing? So I went first, and then I was just raving about how much it helped. And eventually then he did it. And then he was like, oh my goodness, this is so fantastic. I also was the first one to go to a support group meeting,
Yeah.
because again, he kind of felt a little resentful, even like, well, my daughter, she should be the one doing I don't want
Mm,
something else to have to go and do after a long day of work.
mm,
But I think quickly he knew also, okay, I have to do something though to get healthy.
yeah.
So quickly he was going with me, and from then we've been in it together. So I'm very fortunate in that we have that we are together, but we didn't always respond and react the same to
Mm,
all that we've been through over these years, because there's been a lot
mm,
of pain, a lot of trauma. And there were times where it was very hard for us to understand why the other one didn't feel like we did.
mm,
Um, and so gradually we understood that, all right, you're different from me. I'm
mm,
not the same as you. It's
mhm.
okay. So we just
Yeah.
gave each other permission. It's all right that you don't feel like I do right now. You may
Yeah.
later on, or maybe you won't. But that was important to acknowledge that we're going to feel differently. We're not going to respond the same way, the same time. And that's okay.
Did you go to counseling together, separate, or both?
We did each.
Okay.
We did
Okay.
some things alone, and then we did some together. Our church has a wonderful restoration counseling
Mm,
ministry that we both did, um, alone and then together. So it was a combination of
yeah.
things,
Yeah.
um, and it all worked together to help us so much.
Yeah. And I think like the key for those who are probably listening, who's because I was reading in your book, divorce rates are so high for parents with children with mental illness. Um, and also, you talk even in here about some of your miscarriages, which I thought was so. I am telling you, people, drop everything you are doing, hop on Amazon, get this book. Um, but was there ever a moment where you thought your marriage was in danger, or were you guys fairly unified through the whole thing?
Well, again, we feel very fortunate, because of our faith in Christ
Mm,
from before we were married.
yeah,
We never had that concern. We were always totally committed to one another. So we didn't go through that.
yeah. But
We're
I think
grateful.
to take away from this is just having a community. And if you are a believer, making sure you partner with your local church. And also,
Yes.
just, I love how much it's going to be work. I think a lot of times when I'm talking to people with mental illness or who are related to someone with mental illness or in relationship with someone, we want to just like, well, I went to counseling and it didn't work. And one of the things my husband and I have started saying is, it's not enough just to go to counseling. You have to go to counseling and then you have to fight for your life. It's like,
Yes.
when you're dealing with mental illness, all your chips have to be on the table and you have to go all in and work your butt off. And I know
Mhm.
for me, that's what I had to do. I had to go in and be like, I don't care anymore what everyone thinks about me, what I think about myself, how I'm going to look. I have to do this because if I don't do this, I'm not going to make it, literally. And so I love how you're talking about it was you had to recover, and it was a lot of work for your recovery. It did not come easily. And I think people need to hear that, is that
Yes.
healing takes work and we have to be resilient. There's been a couple of words that have come to my mind as we've been talking, and I know you deal with this some in the book, but the three words that keep coming to my mind are resentment, acceptance, and forgiveness. And
Mm.
so you'd mentioned just a second ago about how your husband battled a little bit with resentment. Did you both ever battle with resentment towards your daughter, or was that not an emotion you faced?
No, yes, we did. Especially because this was over 10 years, a long time. And yeah, anger, resentment that she never intentionally set out to hurt us. And we certainly haven't been through what many others have. Um, but I think when you've been hurt over and over again and disappointed, your hopes are up and then they're down again. Um, it's hard not to look at that person and say, "Oh, how could you hurt me again?" They're
Mm,
not they're not intending, they're not trying to hurt you.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
They are hurt, they are wounded. Wounded
yeah.
people wound others, hurt people hurt others. So we know she never did it intentionally.
Mm.
Her pain just spilled over into our lives. But anger, I really struggle, and I'm not an angry person.
Yeah, you don't strike
Um,
me as an anger person.
yeah, I don't like conflict, and
Yeah.
it's hard for me to express my anger. But I came to realize that I was very angry. I
Mm,
was mad. I was mad because this happened. I
mm,
was mad that God didn't fix it.
mm.
I was mad that, sure, the things my daughter did and what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
I was mad at the people that hurt her.
Mm,
And the anger and the unforgiveness all, is this tangled ball. And I share in my book strategy that really helped me called the chair
yes,
exercise that a counselor gave me. So my
yes.
book incorporates some of those things. And things like that really helped me process the anger because I was just stuffing it.
Mm,
And like after my miscarriage and becoming depressed and
yeah.
not knowing what's wrong with me, why do I feel this way? So it, it's interesting to see how, while I would never have wanted to experience this, I truly see it as a gift now. And
Mm,
I have thanked my daughter
mm,
because
mm,
God has used her, even in all of the pain,
mm.
change me and grow me in so many ways. And just one of them is how I've grown myself personally, having to
Wow.
face my own weaknesses and faults. And still today, we're always
Yeah,
a work in process, right?
right, right. And I think that's so powerful to acknowledge, when you're watching your daughter struggle and then to be like, okay, she's struggling. I've got to also work on myself so that I can be healthy to be able to help her. And I've got to be able to be, I think sometimes when we're in relationships with people with mental illness, you want to say to the person with mental illness, fix yourself, be vulnerable, go get the help you need. Whereas we don't want to take a look at ourselves and be, okay, how can I be vulnerable to work on what's going on in my life, And um, my husband had no context for mental illness. And then we get married, and here I am with 3 diagnoses. And he experienced a lot of the same anger. And I think so much of it is just from, expectations that just have been blown up in your face.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
a brand new pastor thinking he's going to marry this godly woman that everybody, I had babies named after me, right? So, I had been a beacon of spirituality,
Uh,
and all of a sudden he's now considering resigning from the church. And like we had talked about divorce because we weren't, I was a basket case, and so he had to work through a lot of anger towards me of like, I blew up all his expectations. And then I think a lot of the anger of like, he couldn't fix it. So he was mad at the situation, and so I think like for people to hear that anger is, oh, I don't know if we want it, but it's a natural reaction, and to give yourself grace to work through it. I think sometimes
yes.
people feel the anger and then feel the guilt for being angry or feel the guilt for being resentful. And like, these are natural emotions you have to give yourself the grace to work through.
Yes. Yes. And then there's this powerlessness and lack of loss of control as well that, yeah, it's hard to know what to do with all those emotions and feelings. Yeah.
Yeah.
And expectations, that's huge,
Yes.
especially in the community. We had such expectations. And we say today, I don't know where we got this, but somewhere along the way, we definitely bought into the idea that there was this magic formula for parents. And if you just read this book and did this and this and that, enough of all these things, you'd get a certain result.
Yeah.
And it worked for 2 of our children. And we're like, oh, how did this happen? Where did we go wrong? And again, that, okay, we don't have total power over another person.
Yeah.
And we acknowledge that we do the best we can, which gives them the best chances for a certain outcome, but
Yeah.
they still have their own dynamics and their choices and heredity and genetics. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, expectations was huge, for us to become aware of what we were doing to ourselves.
Yeah. And how did you, do you think you ever came to a place where you're like, okay, we have accepted this situation? I feel like you have now. Have you speak to the acceptance side of things, like how important and powerful it is to just, because you talk about this a little bit in your book, to be like, okay, this is what God has given us. We have to accept it and not keep fighting against it and just, go after it. And so talk to us a little bit about the acceptance piece of things.
Yeah, that's been hard. Um, and I think sometimes there's still days where we step back again and say, oh yeah, this really
Mm,
is our reality.
yeah.
And of course, um, without the substance abuse anymore, it's completely different.
Mm,
Um, of course, that always exasperates things, but
yeah.
again, I think acceptance, like with everything else, was slow and gradual, where we stopped trying to change or fix
Wow.
and realized that this is it is what it is. One of
Mm-hmm.
my friends loved to say. And our challenge is to make peace with the pain
Mm,
and accept whatever may come. Because we know in mental health, it can be up and down, and you can
yep.
do well for a long time, and then your body changes, your body chemistry changes again. So we just have to continue to stay rooted and grounded in the Lord,
Mm,
keep doing what we know to do to be as healthy as we can, and take one day at a time.
yeah.
They seem like pat slogans, but they're so true.
Yeah.
Um, Stay strong, stay close. I tell parents often, one of our main jobs is to stay as close to the Lord as we can,
Mm,
because of course that's always going to help us in life with whatever comes. We all know
yeah.
from this past year, we don't know what each day holds, and we
Yeah.
have no control. So acceptance for us, I think, was just acknowledging, okay, we don't have control. Everybody has something they're dealing with. This is ours. And we just need to trust God with the story that He's writing.
Mm,
It's not over yet. This is another chapter today.
yeah.
And it all gets back to us to trust, always trust more. And the contentment comes.
Yeah. I'm writing down all these little sayings you're saying. They're so good. Um, I read this story in a book, and just so people know, this is really cool. But the organization To Write Love on Her Arms, the main story that whole organization is centered around is Dena's daughter, Renee. And I love that organization. I have a sweatshirt. It's been something that's been very dear to my heart. So to kind of put all these pieces together has been wild for me. But you talk about in the beginning, when you got a phone call in the middle of the night, your daughter had been out speaking, and this was a particular trip she went on her own, and she called you guys in the middle of the night. And I, like, again, I'm not, my kids are 8 and younger, but I almost had to take a deep breath, because as I'm reading your story, I'm reliving the phone call I got from my dad about my brother. Like, it was just like, whew, I had to breathe for a second. But you talk about how she called your husband, and I believe his name is Tom. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you knew immediately something was wrong. And she said, Dad, I can't get the bleeding to stop. I took too many pills. And she's in a hotel. You don't know where she is. And, Tom very calmly was like, go call the front, like, wrap your arms, go call the front desk, come back and tell us. We'll stay on the phone till someone gets you. I mean, the helplessness. And I was feeling the emotion as you're talking about it, because I think she had been, okay for a while. And now all of a sudden we're starting again. And you had mentioned before we had started recording this, that a lot of times we think recovery is just, straight up like we meet girl has problem, girl gets fixed, girl is better. Yay. And her recovery was not that way. And so how did you manage? I mean, holy smokes, for the parents that are living in fear right now, constant fear, how do you manage that fear? How do you manage the ups and downs? How do you manage all of that?
I didn't manage it very well. When she crashed, I crashed. I was just a nervous wreck. I couldn't sleep. I could hardly eat. I was a mess. I think over time, again, as I was doing all the things we talked about to grow and heal myself, it came to a point where I had to focus on what are those absolutes I can stand on, that I can know without a doubt, because I had no guarantee or promises that she would survive, that she would come through all these things the way I wanted in the end.
Yeah.
God never gave me that.
Yeah.
But what he did was he brought me back to, okay, the basics of my faith. I can know that God is with me. And I wrote these core truths down on an index card and put them up in front of my face and looked at them every day and reminded myself that keep preaching the truth to myself. He was with me, that no matter what happened, somehow I would be okay, that because I wasn't alone, that he would use all of this for good somehow, some way, that I could survive, not just survive though, but I could even have joy again and peace. So I just made my long list, and it got longer all the time, of what I could know for sure. And those were the things that just I stood on, the rock under my feet, because there wasn't much else that I could know other than, really, the big solid one was that God's with me.
Yeah.
And he'll help me.
Yeah.
And a verse that meant so much to me was Isaiah 41:10. It says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will help you. I will uphold you. I will strengthen you with my victorious, righteous right hand." And I held on to those verses, and each one that he would give me in the next crisis. So I just focused on those most simple, basic things and just keep breathing.
Yeah.
Because I found I would literally hold my breath, breathe
Wow.
very shallowly during those times. But a very practical practice that I learned, which is also my book, I used a God box, and I would
Okay.
use it to write down my fears when those things would happen, or when just going through an ordinary day and I become aware of something that I'm troubled, I'm worried and anxious about. And I would pull out this box, and I had a little notepad in it, and I'd write down on the paper what it was I was worried about or fearful about, fold it up, put it in the box, and put the box back in its place high up on my closet shelf. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that process was so powerful, because it helped me acknowledge and specifically put in writing, okay, like that call that night, I'm afraid that Renee will die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if she survives, she'll have brain damage from the medication, the overdose.
Yeah.
So writing it out, putting it in the box, symbolize giving it to
Yeah.
God, surrendering it to him. So that very practical, simple strategy really helped me. And I still have my God box today
I
in my
love it.
closet, to cope with the fears and the anxieties. So again, it hasn't been, oh yes, I just do this.
Yeah.
It's this process and going back to the basics,
Yeah.
keep me grounded.
And I think there's something like reassuring and comforting about the fact that like life isn't plug and play. I think we think that's something my husband talks about from his sports days, but we like to just think like we just, do these certain things, life's going to turn out a certain way. And we get mad at ourselves when we're doing all the right things and life doesn't turn out the right way. And so I think hearing stories like yours, and it's one reason why my husband and I tell our story, from the stage at our church, is because people need to know, like, no one has it together. No one's perfect. We all struggle consistently. We never get to a place where we arrive, but peace is possible, in the midst of the pain. But again, like, it has to be something that we work towards and we work for. And I love it. Let me just check the time. So, okay. So I wanted to ask you this too. You have 3 children total. Renee's the middle child. The other 2 children do not have any mental illness. And so I guess I have several questions, but how did you manage your time? Because I know she took so much time and attention. How did you balance that with the other 2 children and help them understand, and cope with what was happening and how much attention and time it was taking from them for her? Did they ever battle with resentment issues? Can you kind of speak to, your split parenting, like parenting children that didn't and parenting a child who did?
Well, when Renee's issues really came to the forefront, her brother was already away from home in college. So it didn't really affect him too much, although she did struggle from the time she was quite young with what we eventually learned was a sensory processing disorder, which made her very easily irritated, full of a lot of angst at things that didn't bother either her brother or sister.
Yeah.
And we just thought she was being stubborn or difficult, not knowing that, no, there's an underlying issue with that as well. So I know there were things that, a lot of it was typical brother and sister things, but I think just very baffled, not really understanding why does she react like this? What does this mean? But when things really got worse, he wasn't in the home, but I think it affected him in that he felt bad for us. He hurt for us and just didn't understand his sister, but had a lot of compassion for her. With her sister, who was only 2 years younger.
Wow.
Again, we're just very blessed. She is just a very compassionate, forgiving person. And when Renee was about at her worst point, when she was still in our home, she later admitted to her sister that she treated her unkindly and was mean to her because she wanted to try and push her away so that she wouldn't want to be like her. And April's response is, but I love you. You couldn't push me away, or I wasn't ever going to not want to be with you. So April was very forgiving and gracious. And when Renee was in rehab, April would go with us on family night. And in one of the group therapy sessions was when this came out, when Renee told her this. And it was a beautiful time of healing of some hurts with them. But again, we just are very grateful because they've been very gracious and compassionate toward each other. But what we did was Renee's issues really came to a head after she moved out of our home. And so, yes, it did take a lot of attention and time and away from April. And April was in high school then. And so what we did was we began to work very hard to be sure we didn't miss any of April's events. She was very active in sports, so we never missed an event. We didn't let that happen. We made sure in the beginning, we kept things hidden from her. We didn't let her know when there was another crisis with her sister. And we realized that was that was not helpful. Now,
Mm,
April was old enough to understand, so it has to
yeah.
be age appropriate. But
Yeah.
she said, when you keep it from me, it's harder on me when I learn later on. And then I hurt because I'm not able to comfort you and dad. Of course,
Mm,
we didn't want her to be a source of that. So we promised, okay, we won't hide things from you. We'll let you know. So we did make that change, and that was good, so
yeah.
that she wouldn't feel like there was, oh, I'm being kept in the dark.
Yeah.
Um, and then we made an effort to do something very special with her. And for us, it was when we were in another state in the summer, and Renee had a relapse and was hospitalized. But
Mm,
instead of rushing home to be with her, we followed through with our plans for April and took her um, fly fishing. And
wow.
for some reason, she wanted to fish. We were not fishing people, but
Yeah.
we had lessons and had a great time and made that memory with her. So, yeah, we tell parents have to be really careful because it's so easy to um, neglect unintentionally your other children, start to miss events and special times, and that we have to even give them a little more attention. And my husband had a great conversation with April um, when all this started, when Renee was in high school, and explained it to her in a way that was really great. He said, it's like when a part of your body, like when you break your arm, and April broke her arm when she was a little girl. So when you break your arm, that part of you needs a lot of attention at
Mm,
first
mm,
until it begins to heal, but it's temporary.
yes.
And he explained to her, it's like that with your sister.
Mm,
She needs a lot of help right now until she can get better, but it's temporary. And, we're going to be doing our best to be sure that you're not pushed to the side or neglected. But it really helped her understand a little more that, yes, my sister does need um, extra help right now,
mm,
and it won't last forever. So maybe that worked because they have a very
yeah.
close relationship
Yeah.
today.
That's pretty awesome. So just in conclusion, because our time's almost up, like what do you have any closing thoughts that you would say to parents who are hurting, struggling, trying to figure things out right now? Any closing thoughts or words that you want to leave with them?
Well, I would really encourage them not to hide it,
Mm,
to find help, that there's a lot of help and a lot of hope out there. But to keep their hope in God and have realistic expectations, because um, it may be a very long, difficult journey of getting their child getting to a place where they will even accept help if they're an adult. But to just know that while things may not look good for their child, that there is always hope in God,
mm,
and that they can be okay.
yeah.
They themselves, they don't need to put it all on, I can't be okay if my child's not okay, that they can thrive again. So I think the big thing is to just not stay alone and
Mm,
find support. There's lots of support out there, and we need that community around us.
yeah. And I love like not to feel guilty about living your life, about thriving, about having fun. Like you need that to be
Yes.
whole. I have a couple of people that I know that have lost children to suicide, and going and doing enjoyable things or things they once used to do with their child, instead of feeling that closeness, they feel the guilt. And I'm like, that's not what they would want from you. They want you to enjoy your life. And the worst thing you can do is to keep yourself from embracing those happy moments, you know?
Yes.
So just you want to, like, I feel like we got to squeeze that in, just speak to the importance of thriving as a
Yes.
parent.
Well, I think that involves developing our resilience, that
Mm,
God made us to be resilient people that can bounce back and not get stuck in our pain.
mm,
Um, and that helps us to thrive again. Yes, when we're focusing on our own self-care and the whole beautiful panorama that involves, um, so that we can find even purpose in our pain
mm,
and reach out to help someone else. Because when we're in pain, when you look for someone else, and there's always somebody else who is hurt or has some kind of need, And even the smallest thing that we can do really uplifts us, and all those things help us thrive and become resilient as people who have even just developing our faith in the process, not neglecting that, all of it together to make us be the kind of people that can thrive and bounce back and make good from bad.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I love how you said it was a gift. I think that's one thing I've really had to come to understand, is that my mental illness is a gift. It's a gift that God has given me to push me to rely on him and to preach the gospel to myself daily. In other words, like, just remind myself that, like, without Christ, I am nothing, and that he loves me in the midst of my mess. It's a powerful thing to understand God's love when you're in the midst of your mess. And so, Dena, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed this conversation. It has moved me, and do not delay. Get this book today. You are not alone. Go to hopeforhurtingparents.com. And I think we're going to have you on here again, Dena, because I think this is going to be a hit. But
well, thanks. I'd love to. And tonight, I'm starting up another session of an online book study of my book. And anyone is welcome to join me. They can find the information on our Facebook page, Hope for Hurting Parents.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, please. And I'm working with my marketing and website team right now, and we're going to upload some resources to my website. So I'm going to link your website to mine, and so that when people come to my website, they can get all this information. But thank you so much, guys. Don't forget to head to hopeforhurtingparents.com and also go to NicoleGolden.org. But we hope you have a great day. And thanks again, Dena.
Thank you.